Hey everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that are interested in learning how to build some kind of a mobile or web application with a free codeless development builder that allows users to do something like share feelings, maybe like a mental health application, stay tuned. I'm going to be walking through the basics in today's video. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. All right, so one important thing to note is due to the nature of this application, make sure that you're following any and all applicable laws, rules, guidelines, etc., along with moral and ethical codes. So I'm not showing any data handling or anything like that. That's something you need to manage on your end. The idea of this is going to be a simple app with a simple interface where you can allow users to do whatever it is that they need to do. It's the basic framework for a mental health app. So we'll go ahead and jump straight in. Right now, we don't really have anything special. We have this page here, which I've repurposed from a previous video. So if you follow my channel, you'll see tons of different tutorials using this free community edition of AppGyver. You'll need an account at pageVars.com as well as a free Firebase account as well. Now, the video that I actually made this app in, I made an app with sharing location details, and I took a couple of pieces from that app. So for those of you that watch that video or want to, I'll put a link in the description. It'll help you speed things up just a little bit. And basically what I've done is I've repurposed the page that was in that video here and just changed the names of a couple buttons and fields, and then added in these two faces here. So if you're interested, you can follow that video, but I'll walk through how we're going to make this together. So starting off with the pages, we have Firebase authentication setup, the ad page, and the account page. So you'll need to create those three pages. Now the Firebase authentication, you can click on auth, click add authentication here, and then you'll need to actually set up that configuration. To do that, you can go to the data tab. And when this loads, you'll see that you'll have a couple of different options here, and you're going to click Configure Firebase. Now, in this case, you're going to expand the menus for each platform that you plan to use, and then you're going to need to grab that relevant information. To do that, you can go create a project in Firebase, and I have other videos that cover this in more detail. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our project settings. And then from here, you have some details you can get, but it's relatively straightforward. You can click Add App, choose the app type, go through the setup, and once you're done, it'll allow you to download a JSON file or a similarly named file that has pretty much everything that you're going to need. So if I click Download here, and then I go to my downloads and open this, you'll be able to get pretty much every bit of information that you need in this file here, like client ID, API keys, etc. So you can do that for Apple, you can do it for the web app, most of the details should show right here, and then you can also do it for the Apple app as well. Once you do that, you'll populate this page here and save all of those settings. And then once you do that, I would recommend going ahead and creating these two data resources as well. It may help you save some time, but we'll have to go through that in a minute, just because if you haven't already created these, then you're not going to be able to do everything. But just to speed things up, I'm going to use two old ones. One is called locations, one is called my locations. So the locations, these are all the details that you can type in. You can actually pause the video here and literally paste in everything that I have. Do the same thing for the get collection. You can paste everything here. And the get record. And then finally, if you need any of these others, you can use those as well, but I don't have them enabled. Then I'm going to go through and show you these. It's not much of a difference, but the idea is we have a data resource, which I'll scroll through while talking. You can pause when you need to. But we have a data resource for public and then what would essentially be private posts. Bearing in mind, I'm not showing anyone how to handle any security settings, so you'll need to figure that out. So once we have these set up, relatively simple. So the data resources are set up. Anytime you want to use those, you'll have to click the variable slider and then click to add those data variables on each individual page. Now, the last data resource that you may have noticed is profile details. So I'll scroll through that one. The main purpose of this is to allow users to have profiles with data that's saved to them. Now, Once we're done with this, you'll see on the Firebase authentication page, everything that I'm using is pretty much just the default. So you'll have all of these pre-configured. So at this point, we're going to go to the add page. Now, if you want to set your page up similar to mine, then basically the top is just a row. You can drag this option over and drop it in. Once you do that, when you select any of the sections or the cells, you have the ability to add or subtract cells. So I have 3 total, a button on the left, a button on the right, and then title in the middle. So the button on the left is relatively simple logic. Open page, and you just select the page that you want to open. In this case, we'll choose account. And then the button on the right will also open account. And that way we have kind of a left-right toggle instead of the traditional menu. From here, we have a container as a space, and then we have this input field. And then when we continue to scroll, you'll see we have another row with just 2 as the default. But what I dropped in here, as you scroll through this list, you'll see we have an icon. So if we want to add another cell, let's just say we wanted to add a third one, and I'll move this over so we can click on this icon, drop it in here, and we can add in one more icon. Now, to get the position, we can select right here, and then when we change the icon, we go back to properties, and you can choose from here if you want. Icons may not be as appealing. You can also use images and choose your sizing, but for simplicity, I'm just going to scroll through the default icons. So you can scroll through and figure out which ones make the most sense for you and your user base, but I'm just going to choose this neutral face. So we have happy, neutral, sad. Then I have a description field, and then I have fields 1 and 2. These 2 buttons, which right now don't have anything tied to them, they're just there. I have a send button, and then the number 1, which we could just put past feelings to change the text. And then I'll go through this box in a bit. Next up, we need to go ahead and build our variables. So you're going to need app variables, and you're going to need one for project. And that's going to have the actual, we're just going to say this value right here is going to match your project name. Typically, if you go to Firebase, to the right of project in the URL, you'll see that project name, and you can also typically see it in your project ID page. So we're going to have that as our first app variable. The second one is just temp profile URL with no values. For page variables, you can have these 3 set, and you can just click add. It's very simple. I haven't set or preset any values for any of these, so you just name them like I have here. Name, description, latitude, longitude. And then that's all that there is to it. You can go ahead and click save. So up first, this first text box, we're going to select the box. And when you've selected it, you're going to go over here and in the label, you can type in whatever you want. You could say, I feel ... And then in the value field, we can put data variable, and then you can put page variable, and you're going to choose the variable you want to assign it. We'll just say name. It may seem odd that this isn't a name field. It doesn't matter what you call the variables. Since I'm repurposing it, this used to be a name field, so I'm just going to use that. Now, for these 3 buttons, you have multiple choices. This field here and this field here are both assigned to latitude and longitude, so that's from the old app. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these, and then I can actually remove the cells because I don't really need them anymore. And then usually you have to delete the row as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign icon 1. And you have a couple of choices for this. We have 3 icons. So what we can do in the variables field is we can use latitude or longitude. I know it may seem odd, and we can rename them if we want. So instead of latitude, we'll just call it feeling. And we're going to have feeling as a value. So the idea here is if this is selected, then we can choose basically what we want to have happened. So on component tap, we can set our page variable, and it'll be relatively simple. We have 3 choices, so we can name it between 1 and 3. So we'll choose feeling from this variable, and we'll assign it 1. And we can actually copy this logic and go to this one and put paste or Control C and Control V. And then we can choose 2. And I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. Here, we will choose 3. Just copy and paste and set this to 3. So the idea here is right now, if someone says, I feel, it's going to say, all right, this is the name. Name is I feel good. And then if they select here, it'll be 1, here 2, and here 3, which will in turn will have logic to show what that's going to mean later. And then here we have description. Now, I don't really need this field, but I'll keep it here just in case you need an additional field. Again, it's just tied to this value. Now, these buttons don't do anything. It's if you want to have personal and public, you can set it up. But right now, we have a send button. So let's walk through what this is doing. We're going to have an HTTP request. The first time you do this is how you're going to configure your data variables in your data section. So our HTTP request, right now, you're going to choose, and you're going to want to pause the screen and type out this URL. It is a little bit lengthy, and I'll put this in the description. But what this is doing is this is saying this is the first half of how we would send data to Firebase. It's saying generic Firebase project. And this app variable will look familiar. This is where you're putting in your project, so it's automatically populated. This is the other part of Firebase saying, hey, put it here. And then it's going to put it where the page variable is name. So it's just going to call it whatever appears in that name field. So relatively simple. Now, if you don't want to name things this way, then you don't have to. Another choice for your request is you could, instead of page variables, you can actually put something like generate UUID. What this does is it just creates a random series of numbers and letters. That way the name, if it's too long or has special characters, doesn't cause issues. So now what this is going to do when we click save is it's going to start sending data there. Next up, we have to tell it what data to send. So I will put this in the description as well, because it can be quite a bit and it can also be kind of difficult to understand. So a lot of these variables don't even exist, so I can actually remove them to hopefully make it, hopefully make a little bit more sense. So what we'll do is we only need the name, the description, and 1 to 2 more values. So we will delete all of this and walk through this together. So I will paste this portion after I make this correction here in the description. But the short and sweet part is basically we're sending everything in between this last bracket and this first bracket. And it's saying, okay, we have fields. And the first field is name, which you can imagine would appear on the left-hand side. So to show you this in real time, we'll go to the Firestore database. And we'll look at field on the left-hand side and then the data on the right. And this is going to repeat. So here you see we have name and then the page variable for name, which we mentioned earlier. We have description, which is on the left, and then the page variable for description. Lastly, we have latitude and the page variable for latitude. In this case, we can swap latitude for feeling. And for the page variable, we can just put pageVariable.feeling. Relatively simple, and then I'm just going to keep longitude because why not? So I'll put this in the description, and then we're going to click save. And you're going to set the post as the method here, and that's really all that there is to it. So we're going to go ahead and click save. The app should update now. So at this point, you'll see that we have all of these different options here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our page. So we're going to click this button, and here we can type in some letters, and then we'll click this, and then we'll type in some letters and click send. So at this point, we would check our API and see, okay, where is this data sending? So in this case, if we go to location, you'll see we have this random series of numbers and letters, and this is where our post came through. Relatively straightforward. Now, it may seem a little confusing because we have this called location. So I'm going to walk you through how you can easily set these data variables and data resources. If we go to our data tab, You'll remember earlier we created locations, and it was set up right here. And basically we have the text here, and then all of this, which we were just working with, and get. So get basically pulls the data from whatever the URL is. In this case, it's all of this text / location. And you'll notice it's this location and then all of the documents repeated. So what we would do in this case is you can keep all of this, but we can go to test and see if the data is working correctly. So if we want, when we're over in test, we can click run test if we want to try to get the entire collection. And you'll see that it's looking for a specific ID, which in this case, we don't technically need. So you can set the ID if you want. It's not really required. So you can remove the parameter, but when we go to test and click run test, you'll see it's returning a bunch of values which may be confusing, but when you scroll through, you'll see that it actually makes sense. We're actually pulling the data that's in here. So in location, we have these 3, and this one here has these values. Over in our test, you'll see we have those values along with the other 2. So it's pulling the data correctly, and it's also sending the data correctly. If you want to do another test, you can always type in more letters, and you can try to quickly jump between. So if we click send, you'll see we now have a second one that was just green for a second, which has the new data. And if we come over here and click run test, we now have the 4th record. So that's all there is to it. So you can set schema from response, which basically saves that data to make it easier to map in the future. Now, if you want to change this right here and name it something different, you can easily go in here and change the name and the resource ID, and then you can actually change this portion of the URL. You'll just need to remember to change that everywhere else that's potentially relevant. So, for example, in our ad page, when we're posting data, you would want to update the text location to be whatever that new name is. We're going to use it for now just because it's easier. So now that we've saved our data, we're now sending data. Pretty simple. And we've double checked it, we know that it's working. So next up, we're going to learn how to make a container with data in repeat. So this is probably one of my favorite things. So I'm going to remove this map really quickly, and we're going to walk through how this functions. So the way we're setting this up is every time there's a document, it's going to repeat and show whatever we want within that document. Now, in this case, we can put the container, you can just drop a container in, really straightforward. And then into that, I've dropped a scroll view with a title and a second container. So the first container has nothing special. It's just a container, which you can find over here, right here. And then in that container, you can drop a scroll view, which you can find right here. And then everything else is within the scroll view. So the first thing I dropped in was a title, and that is right here. And you put whatever text you want. And then the cool part is this container here, which is the repeated container. So what we're going to do is we're going to do repeat with. So when you drop in that container and you click repeat with, you'll choose your data variable and you would have to define it. So this is where you go to variables and data variables, and we add a data variable for location. Now, once we do that, we can now go back here and we can repeat with data variables, data variable, location, and save. Now it'll look similar to this. It'll just have the text and it'll just have this shadowed look. So now we can actually put within this container different text fields. So the first thing I'm going to put is text. You'll see it's within the container, but you'll notice the text, I can set the content to repeat with. So I can go to formula and do exactly what I did previously, and I can find name and click save and save and save. Now, when the page loads, we can go over, and now everything's loading as expected. Now, this is great, but it doesn't show everything. All right, so these are the options that we have here. Rather than go through selecting those, because the logic can be kind of complex, we're going to choose a different layout. So I swapped it out for this rating menu here, and you can go to Marketplace and choose your layout. So for example, here I chose star so that I can choose a more traditional rating system. And I clicked this and click installed. So you can choose the star selection, or if you prefer, you can use this option here with this row that has something that looks more like something a user would recognize. So I'm going to bring both over, and then I will just simply bring this to the top of the page. And you'll see with these, they're going to set the page variable for feeling. Both of them are going to set that. So the idea here is one of them will set the other. You can have either choice. So I want to show you what both would look like. So what we've done here so far, just to bring you up to speed, is I've added 2 more text fields. So I'll delete these and we'll do these together. So we have a single text value. We'll drop in 1 more, and then we will drop in 1 more. So this one here, we're going to put formula, and then we're going to put repeated, and we're going to put in, you'll see here there's an integer. You can ignore that. That was from some testing I did. The string value is the one that you want. Now, if you want, instead of just having a number, you could put I felt. Now, the reason I typed it like this, anything in double quotes is going to be static text, and then space plus basically means concatenate. So it's going to say I felt and then whatever the value is. Now, you're going to want to put space plus and then put out of 3, for example. So I'll show you what this will look like in a moment, but we need to finish up this last one here. Now, this is one of my favorite values because it really kind of wraps things up, and it's not a value that you need to store. It's something that's just there from Firebase. So you'll see as we scroll through, we have an updated time, and then we have quite a few different options. There's even count index is even, is like there's a lot of repeated stuff. But what we want is create time. Now, if this format works for you, then you're all set. However, for me personally, I prefer to use a format formula. So I'm going to show you how to use this really quickly. To reduce confusion, I'm going to cut out the repeated option that we already have. And you'll see we have format, date, time, local. When you double click that, you'll get this format here. And you'll see over here how it works. You'll see we have our text, our date, and then the format. So in this case, I can paste in the value I just cut and say, this is the date and time. Now the format is going to be a little different. You'll see the format, you can choose something like this. So if I wanted to, I could choose to type this in. I don't like having seconds, so this is what the format's going to look like right now. Day, month, year. But if you want, you could swap and put year first. So let's just say year.date.month, and then hours and minutes. So we're going to save it and click save. So now when we go over here and wait for it to refresh, you'll see that we have a date, I felt, and the undefined is just the days where I was doing some testing here, and these values are a number instead of the string value that they should be. So in this case, I can delete these documents to reduce some confusion. So we'll delete the ones with the numbers and just show you what this new one's going to look like. So when we go back and then forward, you'll see now we have how I felt in these fields. And we could just put today I feel not great. A lot happened. And then we'll just put a neutral. Now this automatically updates this, so you can see if I click here, or if I click here, it updates. So it doesn't matter which option you choose. But let's just say I don't feel great. And I click send. Now when I go over here and come back, you'll see it says not great. A lot happened. I felt 3 out of 3 because I chose the negative instead of the positive. And then this one here. So in this case, the only thing that you really need to make sure to fix or control is deciding which or what each of these actually represent or the value. So in this case, this one should be 3. This one I would say would be 2. And then this one should be 1. And the reason for that is in the future, if someone says they're sad, that would be the value. So if we try it again here and we go back and we say, I feel, and we'll just say good. Or put the happy face and click send. Now, when I come back, you'll see it says good, I feel 3 out of 3, and then it shows the date and time it was posted. So everything seems to work out well. Now, the reason I have these other fields is if you want, you can add additional options. For example, if this description is something I want to send, then I can go to my send field here that I put in the description, and you'll see I have longitude. Well, I can put this as description, and then it could be the page variable for description. And when I click save, anytime you make changes to something like that, you need to go back to your data variable and you need to run your test and set schema from response to make sure that you're getting those new values. So in this case, I'll go back to add, and then that option works correct, but I will need to do a test run very quickly with the new data. So if I type in some words and click send, now I have a fresh data set to work with. I'll go ahead and delete this star rating because I don't really think it's necessary. And then we need to add a new field for the description. So this will go here. We'll put content, formula, and then here we'll put in notes. So this would be the description. So we can type in repeated as we know. And sometimes it doesn't load correctly, so I just click save. And then when you come back in, and again, sometimes it doesn't want to work, so what I'll do instead is go up here and just copy and paste and work with one of these values. So I'll click back here, formula, and you'll see it works. So then I'll go backwards. And what we're looking for is basically just description. And we'll click save. And now everything should work as expected. So we'll go over here and we'll say, I feel like it worked. I am happy. And we'll say test and click send. So now I'm looking for those values. When I come back, you'll see like it worked, test, 3 out of 3, and the new date, which is shortly after the last one. So everything is working as expected here. Now, if you're looking for advanced ordering, I have other videos on my channel, which include making social media related apps, which have the sorting. It's how to make the newer version, I believe, of the how to make a social or sharing app. I think that's the one. But again, you can look into how to make the actual account section here. If you watch the video, I have more other videos in more detail on making social sharing apps, as well as a Coffee Canine app. And also there's another one related to the previous video on making this app here, or the former version, which was just sharing locations. So I hope this was helpful for you. And again, if you have any other questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.